Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. This is our Friday session for all members of the Honest Plus community. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we're going to focus on two specific topics, and they're sort of related. First, we're going to dive into BlackRock, Blackstone. If you're not really too familiar, I have a bit of a background as to how it all began. Who are the key players? What do they, do and control now? How do they affect our lives, literally? And they kind of do. And also, we're going to dive more into geopolitical influence. For instance, I do have a case study as to what if China would prohibit the sale of, the chips to United States. What would BlackRock do? Do you think they would be losing money, or you think they would be gaining money? Now, all this research is based on, of course, research and reading, but also off the record conversations with people who work for BlackRock, who work with BlackRock, and also those who are in politics, who are diplomats, and who are involved with this in one way or another. So all of this is summed up. I will also put it as a text and send to everyone who is Honest Plus member, so you can also read it, pass it on to others to read and whatnot. Then the second topic is we're going to talk about something that is not being widely discussed. It's about China, obviously, buying a huge piece of real estate right in the middle of London City. Why is it significant? First of all, it's in the middle of London. It's huge. It's humongous. It's 6 buildings together. And it is being decided right now, and in fact, it's going to be decided in the beginning of December, whether this will become the world's biggest embassy. A lot of things are wishy-washy there. So we're going to dive in. What do the experts say? National security advisors in Britain, also globally. How will this affect? How is also BlackRock connected to that as well? And who is approving this new type of, crazy embassy, so to speak? Again, this is also based on reading and research, also connection with think tanks in the UK, who did also a deep dive on that. They went there, they did their recordings, and also diplomats who work with that. So, in other words, let's dive in. This maybe not going to be 2 hours like last week, but it is extensive. So let's just dive into that. We're not going to include any actual news today for Friday, October 18th. This will be included in tomorrow's broadcast, together with our No Kings protest coverage. We have reporters in 46 cities tomorrow reporting live their footage and photos and videos. And so in between of that, I'm also going to report on actual news. So join tomorrow. This is publicly available. So tomorrow will be the day where we have people versus democracy. People versus, not democracy, democracy versus authoritarianism. All right. And I just landed. So I literally came in 10 minutes ago. But we're good. We're starting. Let me say hi real quick. Happy Friday, Sean. Hi. Hello. Hi, Michael. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. Now, Let's start with BlackRock, Blackstone, and Vanguard, and what will happen with them. So let's talk first about the origins, how it all began. First and foremost, the story of modern financial power begins in 1980s. Perhaps, well, some of you were born and working, perhaps some of you were not, but with the Wall Street breakup that would reshape the global economy. So in 1985, Steven Schwarzman and Peter Peterson founded Blackstone. This is the first thing that was founded, a boutique investment firm specializing in mergers and acquisitions. They quickly expanded into private equity, real estate, credit, infrastructure, creating what would become the world's largest alternative investment company. Today, managing over $1 trillion in assets. Now, 3 years later, within Blackstone's offices, a new idea took shape. The guy named Larry Fink, who became sort of this big star on Wall Street in his early 30s, he created a model. It was a bit of a computer model where he would predict what type of gains would any action result in. And so he was quite successful with that until the day where he was not. And so on that day, he was actually a bond trader, recently ousted from First Boston after disastrous $100 million loss. Right? So in Boston, quite successful, young guy in his 30s, a nerdy guy, very, introverted. But again, he could smell where the gains are, and so he did. And until the day where he miscalculated, and so his desk alone lost $100 million in one day. And so then a new idea, took shape with him, because he kind of sat down and realized that betting on gains is not the winning strategy. We should be betting on risk. If I can predict what the risks are, then I probably will be able to also predict the outcome. This was his second idea. So first, let's not go for wins. Let's go and bother about the risks. In other words, 3 years later, he joined then Blackstone, and he pitched a different kind of firm, one built not just on profit, but on risk management. The loss, which Fink later said, was caused by not having the tools to understand risk. It also became his obsession. He believed that if financial markets could be measured more precisely, they could be controlled and perhaps even predicted. In 1988, Schwarzman backed Fink to launch Blackstone Financial Management. By 1992, it had been renamed BlackRock. Then 2 years later, Blackstone sold its stake to PNC Bank, a decision Schwarzman would later call as, quote, heroic mistake. BlackRock went public in 1999, and by 2025, it had grown into the world's largest asset management or manager, with over 13.5 trillion under management. That's exactly what they're managing right now. BlackRock's model was fundamentally different from Blackstone's. While Blackstone specialized in private deals and direct ownership, BlackRock built its empire on public markets, creating funds that pooled trillions of dollars from ordinary investors, pensions, and institutions to own slices of nearly every company in existence. And so exactly what he did, which then prompted the downfall in 2008, he was betting on not just the risk, but also on debt. Like, for instance, the bank would be issuing loans, right? They would be gathering documents, getting requests. They would be proving it, and then allowing to somebody to get a loan to buy a house, essentially. So what Larry Fink said, well, let's go to the bank. Let's buy those loans from them. So I'll give you cash right now. You can offer more loans. You can buy more assets. And meanwhile, I will be dealing with those payees and those payments, right, that should be expected monthly. which then prompted, of course, for more loans to be issued. And this became the business itself. And then this led to the 2008 collapse, essentially. But most importantly, he did create this Aladdin revolution. Aladdin is the system on which BlackRock not just functions, on which it makes money. And by the way, I just realized because I just landed, my computer is not plugged in. So I'll leave you for a second. I need to put this thing up and I'll be right back. Just 30 seconds. Give me 2 seconds to get my charge out. All right. All right, I'm back. Okay. That was embarrassing, but now we're plugged and everything is good. Okay. So the Aladdin, it has nothing to do with the Disney, fairy tale or anything. In fact, after his first Boston failure, Larry Fink vowed that no investment decision would ever again be made without deep data analysis. And how do you do that? With computer system. So that vision led to Aladdin. This is short for Asset Liability Debt Derivatives Investment Network. In short, Aladdin. A risk management and portfolio analysis system that quietly became one of the most influential technologies in global finance. By 2020, Aladdin was being used to manage more than $21 trillion across 200 plus institutions. And this is worldwide, including banks, pension funds, insurers, sovereign wealth funds. It doesn't just analyze markets, it maps them, simulating shocks, stress testing portfolios, and revealing systemic risks before they materialize. That technology became the backbone of BlackRock's identity, a company not only allocating capital, but understanding, modeling, and ultimately shaping how capital behaves. And this played the major role in 2008 crisis. And this what made essentially BlackRock what it is now and allowed them to have direct impact on every single industry. Here's how it happened. When the global financial system collapsed in 2008, BlackRock didn't just survive, it became indispensable. The US Federal Reserve hired BlackRock to manage a value toxic mortgage backed securities for rescue vehicles like Maiden Lane, Bear Stearns, and AIG, and to advise on bailout programs that would stabilize the system. And then, do you recall just a couple of months earlier, we spoke about Doge, right? Having access to our data, having access to our, tax records, our, even social security numbers and all that jazz. BlackRock had this access in 2008 because in order to analyze the market and to save the banks and the Wall Street, they claimed that they had to have access for everything. So all this data was plugged into this Aladdin program in order to stabilize the government. And so at that point, they became not just part of US government and treasury system, they became the system itself. This is owned by certain investors. Obviously, they went public, but it's very much controlled by one person only, Larry Fink. Now, this wasn't just an advisory job. It meant BlackRock gained access to some of the deepest, most sensitive data in the financial system. Who was over-leveraged? Which banks were weakest? Which assets were failing? This privileged visibility wasn't available to regulators, competitors, or the public. And it gave BlackRock a strategic advantage that would shape its growth for the next decade. And then, as the Wall Street Journal noted in 2009, quote, BlackRock wears multiple hats. It helped shape the government's toxic asset plan while also standing to profit from it, unquote. The criticism was clear. The firm that helped write the rules was also playing the game. But to many in the government, this was the price of stability. BlackRock wasn't the cause of the crisis, but it became the technocratic arm of state during the cleanup. And once the crisis ended, the power it gained didn't fade, it grew. Now, partially, BlackRock wasn't part of the crisis in 2008. But if you extract Larry Fink himself out of the BlackRock picture, he was the one going to the banks and saying, hey, issue more loans. It's very interesting. I mean, there's the real estate market in the United States will never go down, will never suffer. This was the entire idea. Then there was another folk who went there, well, this is a bubble, this is going to collapse, this is going to collapse. And then indeed it did collapse. So essentially they did provoke the crisis, and using the Aladdin infrastructure computer platform, they realized what this will provoke and when the crisis will happen. And so certainly, since they are now betting on risk, the next idea was that the risk will be provoking crisis, and crisis can be also monetized. Now, from crisis to policy arm in 2020 and beyond. So the pattern repeated in 2020 during COVID-19. The Federal Reserve again turned to BlackRock, this time to manage up to $750 billion in corporate bond purchases through emergency credit facilities. BlackRock was effectively deciding which companies lived and which companies died. And during the worst economic shock in decades, lawmakers raised concerns over conflicts of interest. After all, BlackRock was buying bonds, ETFs, that it also managed. But once again, policymakers argued that only BlackRock had the scale and data infrastructure to act quickly. The message was unmistakable. In modern crisis, governments outsource economic triage to private sector, and BlackRock is the first in line for the job. So, since they worked on this in 2008 in the United States, which was proven a success for them, they were the reason and they were the recommendation to fix any type of market worldwide. So, this Aladdin system is now infiltrated into other foreign governments. And for that, what? They get access to all the data, not just about banks, but also about citizens and how their economic stability is. Right? So then the Aladdin platform can predict when the next crisis will occur. So at this point, they're everywhere. Now, then they start splitting in big three. Today, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, known as the Big Three, are the largest shareholders in over 40% of all U.S. public companies and nearly 90% of the S&P 500. Their power doesn't come from operating those businesses, it comes from owning the votes. When a board election, executive pay package, merger proposal, or climate resolution is put before shareholders, these three firms often cast the decisive ballot. For instance, they don't control Coca-Cola or Pepsi, but they own significant stakes in both. Whether Coke wins market share or Pepsi wins market share, they win regardless. It's the same as you don't, put on a horse and hope for your horse to win. You own the entire competition. So in that case, they do have the controlling package of every single major player in every single industry. And so this, of course, grew over time. And now they're pretty much profiting also from competition. Because, for instance, if Pepsi and Coca-Cola are fighting, let's say one created a flavor, another one is copying it. There's Coke Zero and there's Pepsi something, right? And they try to be alike and they keep a healthier version of light, whatever, right? Or they create a cherry flavor or whatever. And one starts fighting with the other and they start outbidding each other, maybe in pricing, maybe in flavors, maybe in a product extension or commercials or on social media they're fighting. BlackRock makes money because both of them are going up in product awareness and also in in PR terms as well, and people start paying attention, hence buying. And whoever wins, they profit. And that's the same story for other industries. It's not just food and soft drinks, it's also electricity, it's also transportation. So, if you dive deep, it becomes really interesting that the octopus is everywhere. So, this creates a subtle but profound form of power. It's not about running companies, it's about shaping incentives. If competition becomes too aggressive, margins fall and so do returns. If labor costs rise too quickly, profits decline. That ownership structure blunts competitive pressure and aligns corporate strategies in ways that preserve capital, often at the expense of workers, consumers, and innovation. So, again, competition is great, fighting is great, social media attraction and PR is great, but start splitting market share, hiring more people, or maybe paying your people more and accepting, let's say, limited wages. Let's say Pepsi would pay their people more than Coca-Cola. Then their margins and their profits are tanking. So they do have the control in whatever is going on inside those companies. But they're very eager to give those CEOs huge bonuses, up to $230 million in 1 year. And that was part of a conversation I had. A huge part of this power comes from ETFs. What are those? Exchange traded funds. These are investment funds that hold baskets of stocks, bonds, or other assets and trade like a single stock, right? In simple terms. For example, S&P 500 ETF owns a small slice of all 500 companies in the index. BlackRock's iShares brand dominates this market. As trillions of dollars from pensions, retirement accounts, and retail investors pour into these passive funds, BlackRock's voting power grows, right? Because you buy one ETF and this has already a bunch of shares in it. Every new dollar invested in an ETF deepens its influence, not because investors want it to have more power, but because the structure of passive investing centralizes ownership in the hands of few managers. Now, let's talk more about the geopolitical structure. Sounds like Michael says, sounds like octopus is a good description, right? And Michael, to your point, the biggest takeaway here is that in order to help, they infiltrated their system into the governments, not just ours, but many others. And by the way, this is not conspiracy or anything. This is based on research. It's most of it is publicly available if you really go deep, and if you have connections to talk to people who work there. Yes, they will be, pretty much disclosing it. I will also share what Larry Fink said in 2022. By some, fun, way, I attended their BlackRock investors annual meeting on Zoom. And then also I saw Larry Fink introducing President Macron literally 2 weeks ago in New York. I have the recorded speech. I tried to post it. They didn't like it. So we'll talk about it. But let's talk about the geopolitical sphere, okay? Because the structure is clear. The world's two largest asset managers made starkly different bets on China. And they're very much connected. Vanguard dealt with China, essentially supporting their real estate market. As you know, with COVID, their real estate market was tanking. So Vanguard said, they closed their Shanghai office and exited its Ant Group joint venture in 2023, later announcing they have no plans to re-enter the Chinese market. But what they left for BlackRock to come in. And in fact, per Xi Jinping's office, BlackRock at this point is the only international company that is allowed to operate in Chinese market and also install the Aladdin system. So BlackRock in 2021 became the first global asset manager licensed to operate a wholly owned mutual fund business in China. This is mutual with Chinese government. In their first fund raised $1 billion, channeling Western capital directly into Chinese markets. So what I want you to understand is that Yes, they have the bonds and everything and stocks and ETFs of Western companies, right? Companies that control our pension, social, all that, right? And they use this as collateral to invest in Chinese policies and market. So when we speak about, when Trump says, "Oh, tariffs," right, and I continuously keep pointing out that he completely neglects the services market. And if you would include it, we would not be in deficit in trade; we would be actually in profit. But okay, he's only going by products, like we are, in Stone Age. But in products, we buy more from China than we sell them. And he sees that as some type of dependence. Yes, but United States and altogether the Western world has created it for decades. But what we're missing out on this here, that all the shares that BlackRock owns, the $13.5 trillion, are now being connected to Chinese markets that are dependent on Chinese policy. So we are connected to them in way bigger terms than trade. And we buy sneakers from made in China, or will it be Bangladesh or India or whatever. This here is the biggest takeaway, because our pensions and everything is connected to their policy. That's the ironic way. So in the result, for instance, billionaire George Soros called the decision a tragic mistake, warning it risked clients' money and US national security. Why does it all matter? Because these decisions determine how Western savings interact with Chinese policy. BlackRock's presence means US pensions and institutional capital are helping fund Chinese companies, because all we invest through BlackRock into Chinese market, they use to give loans to Chinese companies and their domestic businesses. So we're funding them. BlackRock's presence means US pensions, many aligned with Beijing's strategic goals. Vanguard's exit, meanwhile, signals caution about political risk. In effect, BlackRock has become a financial bridge between Western savings and Chinese state priorities, a position with enormous geopolitical implications. So, obviously, if you want to open business in China, you have to have a green light from Beijing, from essentially Xi Jinping's office. And they, per their rules, if you happen to own something like LLC or equivalent, they do have to have access to your data, to your company operations, and also they own stock if you hit a certain growth. So all those companies are essentially state controlled, something that Trump is trying to do now by owning 10% and more of our national resources and companies that deal with such. So when he speaks about, always say, Mamdani, socialist, whatever, let's Google socialist. Let's Google what is what, right? Because at this point, what they proclaim not to be, they are becoming. And so since we're sponsoring their companies that are in line with Beijing, who are we adding, right? So the goal was to raise at least $15 billion from private and public investors. BlackRock would help structure the fund. No. Sorry, wrong. So, okay, in China. So, in fact, BlackRock become financial bridge between Western savings and Chinese priorities. So, now let's talk about Ukraine. I'm going to read out the facts, and then I'm going to talk about the 2022 briefing with Larry Fink and how it is connected. So, when the war in Ukraine began, BlackRock acted very aggressively, connecting with Zelensky office, talking about reconstructing Ukraine. Let's invest in this. Let's invest in land. Meanwhile, the country has been invaded. Investors are fleeing. Everyone is very cautious, right? The markups go up because it's risky to invest. There were several people from, let's say, George Soros's office who I spoke to, and they said, well, we want to build housing, for instance, in Ukraine, on the land that has been not occupied but bombed, and so we can build new buildings, we can issue loans, we really want to do it. But Zelensky's office only wants cash because that's the only thing they expect from BlackRock. BlackRock is giving cash. So they don't want to function on loan system and credit. They want cash. So BlackRock came in with cash, outcompeting other investors. Now, when Russia invaded Ukraine, BlackRock saw another kind of opportunity, not for short-term profit, but for long-term influence. In 2023, BlackRock signed an agreement with the Ukrainian government to help design the Ukraine Development Fund, a vehicle to attract billions in global investment for rebuilding the country once the war ends. The goal was to raise $15 billion from private and public investors. BlackRock would help structure the fund, attract investors, and decide where the money should go. And this is the main part of that offer and agreement. From infrastructure and energy to agriculture and manufacturing. So yeah, I'm going to give you cash, but I'll decide what you eat, where you live, what does it cost, how do you travel to work, where do you work, how much you earn, and the car, that you should be driving, right? And whatever dinner you're going to get too. Of course, there were critics, and they warned that this meant that Ukraine's future be heavily shaped by global finance firms, prioritizing projects that deliver profits over people's well-being. Others argue that without this private capital, and mind you, BlackRock came in with cash, Ukraine simply wouldn't have funds to rebuild. There are also Russian frozen assets, let's not forget that. If European leaders find their balls and, grab themselves by the pair, they will have the funds available. That's a story for another day. Now, BlackRock's involvement here is about more than money. It's about influence over a nation's reconstruction, deciding what the new Ukraine would look like and who benefits from it. However, in 2025, early of this year, reportedly they scaled back, saying that they are anticipating geopolitical risks. So when Trump came into power, they said, well, Trump is about to surrender Ukraine to Russia. Our investment is not going to be profitable. Then maybe we should be investing in Russia directly. This is the problem right now. And this is the status quo with the Ukraine-US connection. Yes, you see the theater. Yeah, I'll show you the videos tomorrow during live stream with Trump and Zelensky and talking about Zelensky's suit and style and we don't need tomahawks and all this theater. But understand one thing, that if these people who control all our operations decide that investments should be going into Russia, and by the way, they are in Russia. There are several offices of BlackRock. BlackRock, by the way, is also part of Russian Gazprom. The gas that Trump, forbids India and all others to buy. They're part of it. And this is an American company, part of Gazprom. So in their records, when you look at them, the Gazprom records, it always says an American company. It never mentions BlackRock. But if you go and, dive deeper, it kind of leads to it. So what I want to mention, 2022, there was this investors meeting with Larry Fink, where he literally said, and I couldn't believe it, so I downloaded the reading and then read it. And he says, look, we believed that by creating European Union and alliances as such, it would be easier to control population, right? In a way where, not control as to, oh, yeah, I'm going to tell you what to do, but control their buying behavior, control where they work, what the trends are, what do they wear, where do they travel, and all that kind of stuff. Influencing people as part of groups was the idea. But then with, first of all, COVID-19, we saw that even though in today's environment, when people are so independent and have their phones and, have so many, opinions to any type of problem, it was quite easy, as he mentioned, to keep people in order, meaning you will be sitting at home, you will be exiting when we permit and all that kind of stuff. So they saw that people actually can be quite influenced. Then they saw a problem with, for instance, European Union, where European Union is passing its own laws. When I did my work placement in European Union Parliament, they said that, see European Union as, at that point, 25 friends who decided to go to the movies and to cinema, right? And it's good that they already have decided that they go to the movies. But the problem is, can you get those 25 friends to agree on which movie they want to see? First stage, they have to decide on a movie, that they want to go to the movie theater. Then they have to decide on the theater. Then they have to decide on the time. Then they have to decide on the movie they're going to see, and probably they're going to disagree. And this is European Union. That's why every single, because it's democratic structure, it has a democratic structure, it's an economic union, it takes ages to get to any point. But then when they get to it, they pass laws, they pass regulations. Like, for instance, climate change, they take it seriously. So they put carbon tax, they put all types of regulations and all that, right? Which is not profitable for BlackRock at all. I mean, they're making money on gas. They make money on any type of national resources. They make money on financial institutions. So they make money on AI. They invested $40 billion. I reported on this yesterday, to build one facility that will service OpenAI, XAI, Microsoft, all under one roof. Again, managed by Aladdin. This was yesterday. So Larry Fink, back to his speech, he said, look, we actually, then Ukraine invasion happened. And we saw how quickly we could acquire national resources in Ukraine, real estate market. We could buy land very easily. So divide and conquer, as always, proves to be the best strategy to monetize every single country. And so there, in that speech, Larry Fink said that, yes, first he went for profits, then he went for risk. And now he goes for any kind of conflict, because conflict separates, allows you to influence every single part, and also influence the conflict itself. So they see that we don't see globalism, this was his phrase, we don't see globalism as the next stage. We see separation as the next priority. Then you hear the words of anti-globalism. Who tells you that constantly since January 20th? That America first, anti-globalism. Argentina first, anti-globalism, anti-globalism. This then became the whole narrative for Italy, for United States, for UK, for Argentina, and all alike. So you see that this strategy is now sort of spreading into. Now, when he was introducing, 2 weeks ago, Larry Fink was introducing President Macron 2 weeks ago at this Atlantic Council private celebratory dinner. I was there with a bunch of French reporters from Macron's press pool. First of all, we all talked about why is Macron here, because it's a MAGA thing. They did all this gestures that I'm not going to show you, but it was very MAGA-esque. Percent was there, Waltz with the T, the one who is now UN ambassador of US and all that. So there was Millet, was honored, so to speak, and ultimately President Macron was receiving an award as global citizen. And he was introduced by Larry Fink. And Larry Fink, in his speech, said that, I understand that first he praised Macron. He said he was such a talented young, piano player, which was like, what? But he's so young and he really gets it. And he's anti-globalism. I have the speech so I can put it in private form. It's 6 minutes. And then comes Macron. Well, he was introduced and he said, well, thank you, I'm honored. And he says, well, I have prepared remarks, but I decide to speak about what I think I should say now from my heart, so to speak. And he starts bashing the idea of anti-globalism. He says, look, isolationism is not what made America great. Partnerships, trade, deals, becoming that big land of opportunity where people go to build businesses, to grow, make money, invest, right? This is possible, right? You can generate sales only if you have partners, if you have trade contracts, right? If you eliminate those tariffs, but you rather boost your sales. And so he bashes that exact idea of anti-globalism. 2 days later, Macron faces the big doo-doo in his government. And BlackRock starts betting on the change of leadership. So, again, how? Because it owns controlling stock of French businesses, banks, and the like, because they are infiltrated in the systems. Aladdin saves the economic world, right? So, now, next frontier here is about AI and infrastructure. So, what do they do now? BlackRock's ambitions now extend far beyond financial markets. In 2025, it led a consortium with Microsoft, Nvidia, XAI, and others to acquire aligned data centers for 40 billion, which I reported on yesterday and mentioned earlier, part of a plan to raise $100 billion for AI infrastructure worldwide. So now they're investing in this entire structure itself to serve any company in AI business. This is more than investment, obviously. It's a strategic bet on the future. Whoever finances the data centers, energy grids, and compute infrastructure controls the flow of the digital economy. It's a shift from owning stock to shaping the physical backbone of 21st century. Now, here's a bigger picture. BlackRock obviously is not a government. None of them is elected. But it doesn't have an army, or it doesn't write laws, but it wields something just as powerful, control over capital. And this is so-called soft power, right? They shape countries and as economics do evolve. Now, in China, it's channeling Western savings into strategic industries in China, deepening financial ties between the two biggest powers on earth. And I would say not just ties, but dependency. It's all about dependency. Now, in Ukraine, it's helping design financial architecture of post-war nation, deciding what it gets and what gets built and what doesn't. And also what Ukraine will be doing politically. Will it go to NATO? Will it go to EU? Because if I control your national resources and I control your real estate market, and you're the only, you're completely dependent on me, I will have the final say as to where you're going. Now, both moves obviously give BlackRock leverage. Governments often rely on it in crisis. Corporations depend on it for funding, and ordinary people, often without realizing it, have their pensions, retirement accounts, and savings tied to its decisions. Now, no one at BlackRock, Blackstone, or Vanguard was elected, but they vote on the boards that set corporate priorities. They shape market outcomes by owning competitors across sectors. They allocate capital that determines which companies survive, which technologies thrive, and which governments can rebuild. And in every major crisis from 2008 to 2020, they are called in to stabilize the system. So they make money on destabilizing the system, and they make money on then stabilizing the system by changing the goalposts and changing the poles, right? And that's exactly what is happening right now. The whole narrative by BlackRock, again, from sources that want to be not mentioned, the idea is that United States grew, obviously. We had the period of growth of becoming the global power that we are, or we were, and now it's sort of depleting. And this was worth investing in. This was worth, be actively involved in. The control is here. Money is here. New York is the capital of the world in financial markets. States. Then you have LA and California. You have the Silicon Valley. And of course, everybody's coming to the land of opportunity. The scientists are coming here. The universities are boosting. They're attracting students worldwide. They're staying here, getting their H-1B visas, again, boosting the economy and progress. And so we are that superpower that, is headlining every single, industry. But the problem was, in their minds, again, that U.S. citizens or U.S. population become very spoiled and stagnant. We have, for the past decades, we had so many choices that we sort of it grew old to us, right? To start to do something, to start fighting for something, to achieving something, because you live in a very comfortable setting, especially those who are born into families with funds. But altogether, we didn't have conflict on our soil for decades, and so it's very, very stagnant and, as they say, lazy environment. Meanwhile, you have China in their end. China has been fighting for decades, right? And for hundreds of years, they call themselves a tiger, right? Yes, paper tiger is something that Trump labeled Russia with recently, but they see, not tiger, they see themselves as dragon, right? And China is that dragon that has been existing for hundreds of years, and they're fighting and fighting and fighting. And so they have been progressing. They have developed, robotics beyond something that we do have here. Yesterday, I reported on executives, like Ford executive coming stunned back from China, seeing those dark factories where you don't need light because robots are doing everything, and they're saving on that. They have progressed in AI, they have progressed militarily, and all together they are up and fighting, right? Fighting for becoming that superpower. So for them, right, in their mind, it's very interesting to use the money of the lazy, meaning United States, to boost the progress in China. But the progress goes alongside Chinese rhetoric and their political vision. Xi Jinping's vision. And I explained to you in all this how this is all connected. And this is the vision that they share. They share it openly, they share it between the lines, and they share it in private conversations. So when you see the shift towards China here, Trump is doing the theater. Trump is doing the theater for easily impressed and uneducated that are seeing him as a hero and whatever. But altogether, it all works in one line. Chancellor Friedrich Merz was the head of BlackRock Germany for years, right? You have other folks connected to BlackRock and BlackRock alike. Think of Canada too. So you see some interesting figures appearing and now going towards China. Prime Minister Carney has just announced he's traveling to Indo-Pacific. Same time Trump is traveling to Indo-Pacific. Trump is not willing to meet with Xi Jinping as of now. He will be leaving South Korea a day before the summit begins, but Prime Minister Carney will be there, and he openly stated that collaboration with China on the Arctic, for some reason, is the next goal. So I just want you to kind of, get the information, sleep on it, analyze, and make your own opinion. Okay? But we just have to point some things out. Now, here's case study. Because last week, I mentioned that Xi Jinping's office had passed the rule where any company that produces chips that are needed for everything and anything, including military equipment, have to be approved by Chinese government if you sell this to US, right? Why Taiwan or South Korea is also affected? Because they said anything produced with Chinese methods or through sourcing Chinese minerals has to be approved. Any resale has to be approved. Of the final product has to be approved by Xi Jinping's office. At that point, This is China's response to the tariffs and this and that and the other. They're now overflowing EU market with cheap Chinese products. They will be also dealing elsewhere. They're closing deals with Colombia and Latin America altogether. So they are working around United States. But where they control us in this sense is if they were to forbid this would be a big fiasco. Now, here's a case study. What do you think BlackRock would do? Lose money or make money here? Let's dive in. Let's imagine big shock. China decides to stop selling advanced chips to US and also blocks shipments from Taiwan and South Korea because their products rely on Chinese minerals or production. All right? That would be one of the most serious economic disruptions in decades. Here's what it would mean and how BlackRock would act. First, if chips suddenly stop flowing, companies like Apple, Nvidia, Tesla wouldn't be able to make many of their products. Automakers, phone companies, and even the military would face shortages. Stock prices would probably fall fast. At the same time, investors would rush into safe places for their money, like US government bonds, gold, or low-risk funds. This is where BlackRock comes in. BlackRock doesn't run factories. It manages trillions of dollars of other people's money. Its job in a crisis is to keep that money safe and growing. Here's how they would likely act. Run risk checks. Their powerful Aladdin system would instantly analyze how exposed every client portfolio is to the chip crisis. They'd guide investors toward things like treasury bond ETFs, gold funds, or utilities. Let's stop right here. Did you see I didn't upload it, but I do have it here. How much China started to buy gold as of literally yesterday? Do I have this? I will upload it. But it's really, if you look at their purchase power, it goes up, like sharply up today. Also in Vietnam, people are fighting to sell gold. They're paying $3,000 plus to purchase it. So the gold situation is already hinting on something that might happen. And that something is connected to China prohibiting the sale of those chips. So, Aladdin system would be activated. Then they guide investors toward gold and utilities. BlackRock might launch new investment funds focused on companies building chip factories in the US or mining rare minerals outside China. Let's hold here as well. Did you hear that the same story is beginning? That we need to drill Alaska because we have a lot of minerals there. Let's open factories to put together to produce our own chips. Let's also start working with Russia. Trump constantly talks about collaboration with Russia. Why? Minerals. And the factories would be here. So that shift is already happening. Put it together with gold, you kind of see this situation building up. Add on top of it Chinese rules, the new rules for chip sales. Here you got this. Michael says, is that part of China's move to claim Taiwan to cut the chips from US? Yes, but they will do it economically. Taiwan is an island. If they don't sell, they don't get resources to survive. If they block their ports, they have 2 weeks. I had an interview with senior national security advisor of Taiwan. He said that the invasion itself is not the matter of if, it's the matter of how, to the point where they have already shipped out the documents, any valuable, collections, exhibitions, art, whatever, overseas, preparing that if China comes in, that some of that is not destroyed. So it's very much ongoing. It's not going to be something like Russia and Ukraine. Russia wants to eliminate Ukraine and own the history of Ukraine, Rus and whatever. If you're interested, comment. We're going to do a deep dive on that. But here, they need to own the factories, not destroy them. They need to own it. And so if they do so, and once they do so, then yes, you know. Also, another possible conflict, which I hear from diplomatic sources, is South Korea. And again, very much connected to the AI market and also chips. And if those are controlled, China will try to do it monetarily. They will try to do it through policy. They will try to do it through maybe like referendum and stuff like that when it comes to Taiwan. Think about Crimea and Putin, how he did it. But the point is not destruction, the point is owning. So now, where could be the profits if this happens? Even though markets would be in chaos, BlackRock could still make money. Not because they caused the crisis, but because investors tend to move more money during crises. And BlackRock earns fees from that movement. They also usually gain more clients because people want expert help when things get unstable. Think of it like this. BlackRock owns slices of both Coke and Pepsi. If Coke wins, they profit. If Pepsi wins, they still profit. In a chip crisis, they would own both companies hurt by supply shortages and the ones building alternatives, so they would make money either way. And mind you, they're also very much invested in China. So if China prohibits chip sale, then their stock goes up, and hence they make profit on that Western money that they already poured into Chinese market starting 2021. Long game. If chip ban lasted, governments would pour billions into building semiconductor factories at home and securing new mineral supplies. BlackRock would likely raise huge amounts of money to fund these projects and charge fees to investors and governments along the way. They could also benefit if US government asks to manage emergency programs like they did in 2008 and 2020. In past crises, BlackRock has helped the Federal Reserve decide which bonds to buy or which companies to support, and they get paid for that work. And what do you think Besant would be supporting home? So think about it. If US is now investing of our tax dollars $20 billion to rescue Argentina, and now raising another $20 billion from private investment, altogether $40 billion are going to buy out Milei, and they said only if Milei wins and stays in power. This is very much connected to him. Do you think BlackRock has no decision in that? Obviously. And so aligning Argentina with this module is the key here. So risks. It's not all upside for BlackRock. Obviously, a chip crisis would push down stock prices, which could shrink their total assets and cut its management fees. They'd also face political pressure, especially over any investment linked to China. But historically, BlackRock has emerged from every crisis bigger and more powerful because it plays a key role in helping governments and investors navigate the chaos. So bottom line, if this were to happen, more money would be flowing into safe funds, new investment products built around supply chain independence, and government contracts to help manage the crisis. So this is on BlackRock. If you do have questions, please leave it here. So why am I sharing this? Is not to induce some type of anxiety or fear. I hate fear mongering or whatever. For me, I like learning the facts so I can sleep on it and kind of make my own opinion and start understanding what is happening. As we are the world always works in a way where you have conflict, destruction, and then rebuilding, prosperity, and then it goes back to war, destruction, rebuilding, prosperity. So we are diving into this destruction, war, authoritarianism, which will end with another type of conflict to then rebuild. And this is something that I talked about to Cora Newman. She's Montana senator. She's former State Department employee and I believe State Department employee, or was it? Anyway, she dealt with health services for women. That was the whole topic. And she's founder of Global First Ladies Alliance. And I recorded an interview with her. That's where I lost the voice, I guess. well, not that I was screaming, but that was my last thing before I recovered a couple of days ago. And when I was flying today, I edited the interview, and she was so straightforward, talking about authoritarianism, talking about where we are, talking about what would be next. I asked her, how do we survive? Do we not become numb? She spoke about authoritarianism and stages of it, that silencing women is the first stage. And so that's why at this point, as she mentioned, the first lady's stuff is very important, because if they speak out, there's at least hope. She compared to Afghanistan, she compared to different sources. So next week, I will put out that interview, and I really encourage you to watch it. I think it's 40 minutes, but she was very straightforward. Democratic senator, but also very open as to what is going on, what would be next, and what to pay attention to. So I really recommend it. And when I was watching this today, or editing it, I realized that, yeah, it's all very much connected, and people do understand it, that it is a cycle of life, so to speak. You do have um, destruction and conflicts and authoritarianism, and people emerging as winners in any type of crisis. But also here, if you have such big company that is, exactly as Michael mentioned, octopus, involved in different governments on different levels, that is profiting off of any crisis, then maybe inducing such situation would also be an opportunity for them to again make more money. That's exactly what is happening. So now I would like to talk about the Chinese super embassy. It's not as long as the BlackRock segment, but I want us to talk about it because nobody does. So in 2018, Chinese government quietly purchased Royal Mint Court. It's a historic site near the Tower of London for about 255 million pounds. Their plan was to build what analysts are calling a super embassy, the largest Chinese diplomatic complex in Western world. The location isn't random. Royal Mint Court sits between the City of London and Canary Wharf, two of the world's most important financial centers. It's also right above critical infrastructure like fiber optic cables, data centers, and telecom networks that carry much of the UK's financial and government communications. From the start, the project was ambitious. Architectural plans submitted to local authorities show multiple basement levels, underground chambers, and possible tunnels. But several sections on the blueprints were redacted before being made public, especially those describing the lower floors. So they said, we're going to have tunnels, we're going to have chambers underground, but we're not going to reveal it to you because it will be our state property in the middle of London. And just to visualize it, I just want to show you how big this thing is. The red situation here, that's the embassy itself. And just imagine underneath are the tunnels, the chambers, access to fiber optic cables, data centers, telecom networks. Also, the British intelligence offices are on different sites. So here are coming the tunnels. The secrecy is one of the reasons that this project has become one of the most controversial diplomatic proposals in British history. Now, since plans first surfaced, national security experts and lawmakers have warned that the super embassy poses serious risks. And here's why. First, the embassy proximity to major fiber optic cables raises fears that China could attempt to intercept or monitor communications traffic. As one cybersecurity specialist put it, quote, fiber optic tapping is technically difficult, but if you're physically close to the network, it's far more feasible, end quote. Then the tunnels. Some of the most concerning details are underground. Redacted sections of the plans, which even British officials cannot fully review, show multiple basements, and unclear facilities below street level. Security analysts worry that they could house intelligence operations, communications intercept rooms, or even detention areas, all protected, here's the big takeaway, by diplomatic immunity. If this thing is granted, mind you, they already own the building, the land, they own it. But if it is now officially permitted, and you don't know what they're doing with this now, but if it's officially permitted to become the embassy itself, all this thing has diplomatic immunity. It cannot be accessed by any police, by anybody. Nobody can be questioned. Nobody can be, searched or anything like that. You see, this is their mock-up, how it would look like from the top, from the front. This is the gates. It's a very serious situation here. So, once built, embassy grounds are legally considered foreign soil. British authorities would have virtually no power to inspect or monitor what happens inside. Critics say this could allow China to install surveillance infrastructure without detection. The UK is part of the Five Eyes, the intelligence community, intelligence alliance with US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Analysts warn that if the embassy becomes major listening post, it could strain trust within the alliance and even limit intelligence sharing. Now, there are human rights activists and Hong Kong democracy advocates. They fear that this site could be used to monitor, intimidate, or pressure Chinese dissidents living in Britain. As one of their MPs said in Parliament in the UK, quote, it risks becoming not just an embassy, but an outpost of surveillance and control, end quote. Now, here's what type of role does Prime Minister Starmer play? The project has been politically explosive from the beginning. In 2022, the Tower Hamlets Council rejected China's initial planning application, citing public safety and local opposition. But Beijing didn't back down, and the case was called in by the national government, meaning the final decision would rest with ministers, not local officials. When Starmer Labour government took office in 2024, China resubmitted the plans within weeks, widely interpreted as a sign that Beijing expected a more favorable reception. Since then, the government has now delayed the decision multiple times, but most recently, they scheduled this for December 10th, 2025. Starmer's administration insists it is taking national security extremely seriously, but critics accuse the government of being too cautious or too eager to reset relations with Beijing. The debate intensified after Starmer promised to publish evidence from a collapsed Chinese spy case amid accusations of political interference. And so Starmer is sort of advocating for this embassy to be greenlit or to be allowed for, because this would then soften the relationship with China. Now, embassies are normally places for diplomacy, but this one is different in both scale and strategic value. First of all, it's not just in London, it's on top of some of Britain's most sensitive communications arteries. It's expected to be China's largest diplomatic mission anywhere in the world, dwarfing, the US embassy in London, which is quite big. The blueprints and extensive underground facilities have no precedent in recent diplomatic projects. Also, Western intelligence officials warn that an advanced listening post in London could compromise Allied operations, not just British ones. So there's a joint committee on the national security strategy. It's a cross-party parliamentary body warned that approving the project in its current form could pose eavesdropping risks in peacetime and sabotage risks in a crisis. Now, the Center of Strategic and International Studies, the CSIC, went further, calling the project, quote, a severe national security risk and could give China a permanent intelligence foothold in the heart of Europe's most important financial hub. So the embassy project isn't happening in vacuum. It's part of broader pattern in China's foreign strategy. They're building deep physical footholds, not just in markets and supply chains, but in geography itself. So, for instance, from ports in Greece and Africa to data centers in Europe and industrial parks in Southeast Asia, Beijing uses infrastructure projects to secure strategic advantages. A massive fortified embassy in London, steps away from nerve center of global finance, fits that playbook perfectly. And because embassies enjoy legal protections under international law, they offer a unique combination of strategic access and political cover. So, I think it's worth a discussion and to be mindful of. My question is when such thing is coming to United States. If everything is for sale, as I mentioned, this circus travels. If we allow for fishermen to be knocked out of the sea, okay, two of them survived, so they will be speaking, but now U.S. detained them with no jurisdiction. It is international waters. Anyway, but if we swallow the fact that we can't just murder people with no reason for it, no process for it, no decision, no law and order, this circus travels. If this is normalized everywhere. Same with this embassy. If this goes in London, next thing is going to be in DC or New York. If things become so evidently for sale, those with money, and China has the money, as I mentioned and explained to you through this 1 hour and 10 minutes, they have our Western money through their companies and profits to invest to build their own allies and relationships and ports and data centers and super embassies. And this is all connected through one company and their infrastructure that grew on American soil. So, final decision on this embassy, again, will be on December 10th of this year. One thing is already clear. This isn't about bricks and mortar. It's about future of sovereignty, intelligence, and trust in the age of strategic competition. And again, when you see this, it's massive. And very questionable, too. Michael says, isn't Scotland Yard and SIS intelligence there? Yes. Britain left the EU, so they act unilaterally. Yeah. And they go very much toward, softening relationship with China. You see other, obviously Latin America, obviously you see even Africa. China is coming in as a rescue. And my question was always, with what money? Right? Because we see that their market is very artificially supported. Xi Jinping is literally writing out checks to support the market since COVID, especially when the market essentially collapsed because of the real estate. But then if you start understanding the system and how Western money feeds the Chinese market, then it starts making sense. And so I think if, and I always say, personalities here and there and liking, disliking aside, even respecting, disrespecting aside, if and when Trump does something well, I'll be the first to applaud him and call him daddy or whatever he wants to be called. But I think we're missing the point here in all that theater that we are becoming more and more dependent, not in terms of trade. And again, where we buy our sneakers and t-shirts, but where does our money go to, right? Because we do pay tax, it goes to our government sponsors what? And so in that case, I think if we had smart people who could think deeply and also widely, we would have different outcomes. I hope those are there, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't see it at this point. Hey, Steven. Softening relations with China that always works out well and reciprocated. Yeah. And it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous, especially when they are above our resources right now militarily. When they go into Taiwan, will we go into Taiwan? We don't even want to rescue Ukraine at this point. And then today's newsletter, it's ready. I will structure it and send it out this evening. And this running thing, subscribe to it. It has no paywall. Um, there was something interesting that the German outlet did, and I'll feature it there, where they said, you know, take Russian invasion but apply it to different countries. And so they do maps of different countries and they see how it would look like if Russia invaded them with the progress that they have in Ukraine. And certainly, I mean, it serves the point of making it relatable, right? Where you start understanding that it's not just Ukraine that is far away somewhere, I don't know where, but it's here. And Trump talks about oceans. He talks about, oh, there's ocean between us, nothing will happen. Listen, there's AI, there's so many ways to invade a country, and really bombing it is the last resort. The reason why nobody believed Putin to do so, like, really, you're going to invade countries physically with missiles, with bombs, yes, with drones, but come on now. In 2025, there's so many ways to control markets, right? Countries, purchasing power, right? So that's the point here. I realize this is an open video, so this will be then for our dear subscribers. We'll change that. But if you're here and you never joined Honest Plus, this is what we do on Fridays. We dive deep. Last week we talked about what did we talk about? Michael was there. We talked about what did we talk about? Yeah, we talked about, yes, how close are War Three. I sort of explained the latest geopolitical conversations, where would be the next conflict, also what's inside the US, what's next after Project 2025, because as you know, it's only 180 days. So we dived into that. And then next week, we're going to go deeper in a topic that I'll brainstorm and see what's the reason behind it. Maybe we dive more into Russia, Ukraine, maybe Palestine and Israel, or Trump, Gaza, and what's behind it. I'm kind of very interested to see what Boston Consulting Group and Tony Blair did for Trump, and I am curious as to why it is supported by the Middle Eastern world. Saudis and Qatar and whatnot, because Qatar is sponsor of terrorism. And yes, they have Doha and they're rich, but why do they allow this to happen? So what was there? What did he promise them? Very curious. If I can find something more on that, that would be great. All right. So thank you so much for being here. Tomorrow, I'm planning to be live on 12, between 12 and 1 p.m. Eastern, depending on how soon we're going to get footage. We have folks who are in 46, it's 48 at this point, cities who will be sending photos and videos. Everybody's already informed, maybe you're one of them. And I will be live again, covering the actual news and reporting live on the protest. So this would be really, really interesting. And Irene is here. Irene, thank you. I saw your email and I will reply throughout this weekend. Thank you so much for the email. I really appreciate you, and I have it. So again, thank you. See you tomorrow. Let's own that day tomorrow. Democracy will prevail. We know that we are in some type of a circle of life. And our point is to survive, keep our head on a swivel, not to go down with it, but understand what's happening and understand how you can take care of you, your loved ones, and your community first, right? This is important. And then we go further. And so if you would like to join Honest Plus, if you're here and you're not subscriber, I don't know, something went in the system, please join. That's the whole story. Okay. Lastly, last Friday of the month, we are meeting on Zoom. So if you are a subscriber to Honest Plus, go to, I'll send you an email, honestnetwork.com/honest Honest Plus, ONEST Plus. And there's a form. Please leave your email because YouTube doesn't give me your emails. So I can invite you to the Zoom call. This Zoom call will first begin with me sharing what the diplomatic sources shared about, how do I phrase it? The discussion at the Oval Office when the EU leaders made the pilgrimage to Washington, D.C., and the future of NATO bases. To put it this way. So this will be not just off the record, but off the grid. And so we can see each other, you can ask questions, we can talk. All right? Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Have a peaceful night. Newsletter is coming right now. Will be very straightforward about Putin, Zelensky, Trump, and all. I'm over it. And tomorrow we will be live. All right. Thank you and see you soon.